Is the dark side in the Star Wars universe real in our own universe? It would be easy for me to say that the dark side is simply an attempt to try to control the universe, try to bring it under one's sway, and wrapping oneself in layers and layers of power and egoic self importance to the extent that one is lost in one's ego. But that's not quite what I think the dark side is. Whether it's intended or not in the Star Wars universe is irrelevant for this conversation. Is it a thing for us? Does it exist for us? Um, when we look at Palpatine or Darth Vader's journey, we see a lot of pain. We see a lot of obsession with power and trying to gain a level of freedom through control. But perhaps the dark side can also be compared to something like a storm, violent, terrible for somebody in the storm. But if we did not have storms, then our atmosphere could not, in our ecosphere, could not exist. We could not exist. Without storms, nature could not right itself. So perhaps in nature, we can see a reflection of the dark side. But there are other reflections in our world as well. For instance, what is the power that those of us in the occult community try to tap into to gain for ourselves? It's called by many different names: shadow energy, you can even call it the energy of the void, abyssal energy, or perhaps you might even say demonic. All these things are different, however. They all have different natures. Can all these things together be considered the path of the dark side? Or is there some kind of inherent energy that's separate from any of these single energies that one can call the dark side? Let's explore what it looks like through the two codes we see in Star Wars. We have the Jedi and Sith codes. The Sith code says, "Peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me." The Jedi code says, "There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force." Now, in a vacuum, both these codes seem remarkably inept at explaining or delivering the truth about the nature of things in their totality. They seem to need each other to exist. Because isn't it kind of ridiculous to think that there is no peace or there is no emotion? In reality, we have both of these things. We start to see the two paths kind of form as a reaction to one another. Or maybe reaction isn't the right word for it. Maybe will is a more appropriate term. They are trying to will their vision into reality. Because reality doesn't seem to exist on its own. It's almost as if they are rival religions or even cults or philosophies that are choosing to see through a certain perspective. They both desire two different things. One desires strength, another desires knowledge, another power, another serenity, another victory, another harmony, another to break free of chains. But what are these chains? And then the Jedi talk about death. There is no death. There is the Force. Everything simply is. So, what can we make of these two? The Sith seek victory over their mortal constraints through power, whereas the Jedi seek freedom from their mortal constraints by acceptance of them, by not trying to fight mortality, by accepting it and allowing oneself to exist in that acceptance. Whereas the Sith, they view the mortal constraints as something to overcome. They view these mortal constraints as shackles, and that victory of which the Sith speak is a victory over the limitations of one's body, one's immediate surroundings, one's circumstances. They want very similar things. But what is this force that they're relying upon, that they're both speaking of? This force that underpins either victory or acceptance. What is that underlying nature? When the Sith use Force lightning, they're literally ripping apart the Force. That's what causes the lightning. And the Jedi say that the Force is what binds all things. It exists in the midichlorians, in the bodies of everything. So, are the Jedi correct in saying that the Force just is, and that the Sith are the ones that are actually destroying it by ripping it apart, but don't both need to exist as well? It is only our inability to see the death in nature that makes us believe that it is inherently peaceful. The dirt beneath trees and beneath our feet is made of organisms that died. Death is a necessary part of nature. Nature feeds on itself through death and then rebirth. But there can be no rebirth without death. There can be no harmony without periodical and regular, every second destruction of one small life form or another, of one predator against his prey. It is only our inability to see and to understand time that makes us think that all these things aren't happening all at once. This makes the Jedi's claims that there is no death that is in their code pretty preposterous, unless it is purely a philosophical point, because death is everywhere. It is a part of life. Though one could also say that the dark side is unnatural from a certain viewpoint, in that it can prolong life through pure passion and rage. Life can be prolonged in the dark side. But perhaps this is just an animal trying to extend its life for as long as possible. Isn't that also inherent in survival instinct? Isn't that thus inherent in nature? So perhaps the dark side isn't as unnatural in the Star Wars universe or even our universe as we may think. But there's still that question of what is that power? Without going into too far of a explanation of the various kinds of energies I've tapped to in my own spiritual practices and magic, I can say that the dark side, in this concept of it, in relation to Star Wars, is creative use of the energies that we have in our bodies and the energies all around us. Creative use in that we draw it in and employ our will and even our ego to make it work for us. That energy is there. It's inherent in all things. The dark side is a method of using that energy. Just like the Jedi use the Force in a certain way, the dark side is using that energy in a very creative and personal way. A personalized path for an individual by that individual is the dark side. For even a sun scorches fields in its burning, in its shining, in its radiance, so too may some individuals scorch others as they travel the path on the dark side of personal power, of personal longevity, of personal brilliance. So too may one on the dark side scorch everything around them. But perhaps this is a bad indication because we can use our paths intelligently. Balancing even the dark side is how those in the Star Wars universe were able to forge ahead, not just by being consumed by the storm, but by riding it, using it. So perhaps there's a little bit more balance even on the Sith side. Otherwise, they would just consume themselves. This has been a brief exploration of the dark side and how it is the path of using the energy all around us for personal gain, directing it with our will. That is the dark side. What the energy actually is, what the substance is, that's a much larger question. But I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that this kind of video is something that you look forward to seeing from me in the future, because I plan to do more Star Wars videos. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below on YouTube. I am kind of new to this style of video, but I hope that my first attempts at them have been well done, and I hope to improve in the future and even start adding video. At any rate, thank you very much. May the dark side be with you, and have a wonderful day.